The crystalline data matrix hummed against Alina's palm as she stumbled through the narrowing tunnel, her headlamp flickering with each magnetic pulse that rolled through the ancient ruins. Behind her, the collapsing chamber groaned like a wounded beast, dust and stone fragments cascading into the space she'd occupied moments before. "You had to touch it, didn't you?" she muttered to herself, clutching the artifact tighter as she ducked beneath a low archway. Her suit's environmental warnings flashed red across her visor, radiation levels climbing, oxygen reserves dropping faster than they should. Whatever was happening, the artifact was accelerating it. 3 kilometers of twisting subterranean paths and 2 near-death experiences later, Alina emerged into Proxima's harsh twilight, collapsing onto rust-colored sand as her excavation team rushed toward her. The last thing she remembered before losing consciousness was Dr. Moreau's expression of horror as the crystal matrix briefly projected a star map directly into everyone's minds, accompanied by a sound that shouldn't have been possible, a sound that seemed to bypass their ears entirely, a distant, mournful horn blast echoing across vast emptiness. "It's killing them, Alina. I'm shutting this project down." Director Chandrasekhar stood with his back to her, staring through the isolation ward's window at her 3 comatose colleagues. Wei, Nkioma, and Davi, brilliant linguists all, lay motionless in their medical pods, brain scans showing bizarre patterns of activity despite their unconscious state. "Their minds are still working," Alina argued, keeping her distance from the artifact now secured in a containment field at the center of her lab. "They're translating, sir. Something about this matrix. It's forcing a connection. Using them. All the more reason to lock it away until the Archaeological Authority sends specialists. That's 3 months, minimum. By then, the temporal degradation will be irreversible." She pointed to the hairline fractures already spreading through the crystal's outer layer. "This is first contact material, sir. Not with whoever made this record. They're long gone, but with whoever they're talking about." Chandrasekhar turned, his face grim. 3 of my best people are effectively brain dead. Dr. Reyes, give me one reason I shouldn't blast this thing into the nearest black hole. Alina touched her temple, where headaches had become constant companions since the moment she touched the artifact. "Because it's already inside me. And I think I can control it better than they could." Alone in her lab 2 weeks later, Alina worked within the new protocols. 30 minutes of exposure, then mandatory medical evaluation. The matrix responded differently to her, projecting not star maps but text, fragments of an alien language that shifted and reformed as her mind processed it. The breakthrough came on the 17th day when the matrix suddenly adjusted its output, beginning to display symbols that approximated human languages. It was learning from her as she learned from it, forming a translation bridge. "My God," she whispered, as the first coherent sentence emerged from the chaos of symbols. "It's an archive, a warning." The translucent crystal pulsed, scrolling text faster as if sensing her comprehension. "Beware the LEJC of DHE Istar killers." Alina's fingers trembled as she traced the next line appearing in the holographic display. "Humanity. Extinction. EVENT Sila Isification Omega." The translator program she'd been developing began to correlate further symbols, drawing from linguistics databases and pattern recognition algorithms. Each translated fragment painted an increasingly disturbing picture, one that contradicted everything humanity believed about their place in galactic history. "That's not possible," Alina muttered as the next sentence formed clearly in shimmering amber light. "They created the Nova-Eradicating Armada. They saved us all. And then they vanished." The matrix suddenly flared, projecting a 3-dimensional image of a fleet unlike anything in human records. Thousands of ships in precise formation around a dying star. At the center, a vessel bearing unmistakable markings, the flag of a united Earth. Alina's eyes burned from lack of sleep, but she couldn't tear herself away from the holographic projections. Each new translation sequence revealed horrors that defied comprehension. The Matrix had begun organizing its data chronologically, responding to her questions as if eager to tell its terrible story. "Show me the first Phaetonian feeding event in recorded history," she commanded. The air above the crystal shimmered, reconstructing a star system with twin suns. The date marker indicated this event occurred over 60,000 years ago. A peaceful civilization flourished across 7 planets. The archive identified them as the Lyran Confederacy, a species of silicon-based sentience whose technology rivaled anything humanity had achieved before its apparent disappearance. The recording showed the arrival of what appeared to be simply a beautiful cosmic phenomenon. Ribbons of luminescent energy dancing between the twin stars, mesmerizing in their complexity. The Lyrans initially celebrated, their astronomical facilities documenting what they believed to be a natural wonder. Then came the horror. The ribbons began to sink into the stellar coronas, creating patterns that Alina's astrophysics training identified as impossible gravitational distortions. The Matrix translated the frantic communications between Lyran scientists, their initial wonder transforming into dawning terror as they realized what was happening. The stellar cores are destabilizing simultaneously. This is not possible under any known physics model. The energy beings are intelligent. They are communicating with each other. They are coordinating. Evacuate the inner planets immediately. We have calculated approximately 73 days before total stellar collapse. Alina watched, sickened, as the recording showed the desperate evacuation. The Lyrans had advanced technology, but 7 heavily populated worlds couldn't be evacuated in such a short time. The footage from orbital stations showed the Exodus fleet, millions saved, but billions left behind as the stars pulsed, swelled, and then erupted in synchronized supernova. The final transmission from the Lyran homeworld was preserved in its entirety. They are feeding on the explosion itself, the gravitational waves, the radiation burst. They are consuming it all. And they are growing stronger. To anyone who receives this, they will come for your stars too. They are beautiful. They are hungry. They are death incarnate. The recording continued, showing the aftermath. The Phaetonians, now visibly larger and more complex in their energy patterns, drifting through the debris field of what had been a thriving civilization. They moved with obvious purpose toward the nearest star system. "Show me the Galactic Council's response," Alina requested. The hologram shifted to an enormous chamber where representatives of dozens of species gathered in evident panic. The most technologically advanced civilizations proposed solutions that failed one after another. Weapons designed to disrupt the Phaetonians passed harmlessly through them. Attempts to fortify stars only delayed the inevitable. Mathematical models projected extinction within 300 years. A Merithi representative, insectoid, with iridescent carapace reflecting light as it gestured with multiple limbs, presented the final analysis to a silent chamber. The Phaetonians exist partially beyond our dimensional constraints. Our weapons cannot touch what does not fully exist in our reality. Our shields cannot block what can phase through solid matter. They are mathematical perfection in predatory form, and our extinction is mathematically inevitable. The Matrix's translation algorithm rendered the final message from the Eluan Empire, a species Alina recognized from archaeological records as having controlled nearly a third of the galaxy before mysteriously vanishing. They are coming. They are hungry. They cannot be stopped. Alina paused the playback, rubbing her temples as the implications sank in. Humanity's ancestors had faced an enemy that had defeated civilizations far more advanced than Earth's. And somehow, impossibly, they had found a way when all others had failed. "Show me," she whispered to the crystal, how humanity discovered the Phaetonians were coming. The Matrix shifted its projection to an ornate chamber Alina recognized as Valerian architecture, organic curves and bioluminescent surfaces creating an environment of serene beauty. The 12 representatives of the Emergency Galactic Council sat in a circle, their physiology as diverse as their opinions. The date stamp indicated this occurred approximately 300 Earth years ago. The primitive species designation H1372, locally known as humans, deserves our intervention, argued a Valerian diplomat, its translucent skin pulsing with emotional bioluminescence. Their technological achievements, while rudimentary, show remarkable innovation. Their understanding of physics is surprisingly advanced given their brief civilization span. The Marithi representative chittered dismissively, mandibles clicking. We have run the calculations. Evacuation resources are finite. 117 species face extinction in the Phaetonian path. The humans of Sol 3 rank 94th in evolutionary significance. Saving them would mean sacrificing species with greater potential. Potential is not measured by technological achievement alone. The Valerian countered, rising from its seat. Their creativity index exceeds even our own. They've developed 7 unique approaches to quantum theory in their brief history. Their music alone. Their mathematics is primitive, interrupted an amorphous creature Elena couldn't identify. Their social structures fragmented. Their planetary ecosystem already compromised by their own activities. The probability of meaningful contribution to galactic civilization is 0.27. The council chamber erupted in competing arguments as a holographic display showed the Phaetonian advance, now less than 20 light-years from Sol, having consumed 11 stars in the previous decade. The Valerian diplomat, identified in the translation as Science Minister Talem, made a final plea. I request minimal resources, 1 ship, a small team. We can at least share our knowledge, give them a fighting chance. The council chair, a towering crystalline entity, gestured for silence. We have voted. The resources will be allocated to species with survival indices above 0.7. Minister Talem, your request is denied with prejudice. This discussion is concluded. The matrix projection jumped ahead 3 solar days, showing Talem in a small laboratory, frantically downloading data into a portable matrix similar to the one Elena had discovered. A younger Valerian burst into the room. They've issued arrest orders. The council enforcers are searching all outbound vessels. Talem continued working, tendrils flying across control surfaces. Then I won't use an authorized vessel. The old research shuttle still has its stealth capabilities. This is treason. The younger Valerian whispered, but moved to help rather than hinder. No, Talem responded, securing the data crystal. This is conscience. The Council has abandoned its founding principle that all sentient life deserves protection. The humans cannot possibly survive the Phaetonians. Talem's skin pulsed with determination. Perhaps, but they deserve to know what's coming. And there's something about them. Their approach to physics is unorthodox, intuitive rather than iterative. They see patterns where we see only chaos. One primitive species cannot succeed where the combined intellect of the Council has failed. Talem secured the crystal in a protective case. Perhaps that's precisely why they might. They haven't learned what's impossible yet. The projection shifted to Earth, a remote mountain observatory where 12 human scientists worked through the night. The Matrix identified the location as the Atacama High Energy Observatory, Chill, Earth. A brilliant flash lit the sky, followed by a controlled crash as Talem's damaged shuttle impacted 2 kilometers from the facility. The recording showed stunned humans approaching the wreckage, their primitive environment suits and vehicles almost comical compared to the advanced technology they were encountering. Inside the shattered vessel, Talem lay dying, translucent skin barely pulsing. As the humans breached the hull, the Valerian activated a final protocol. The data crystal illuminated, projecting images directly into the humans' minds. The Phaetonians, their feeding patterns, the stars already consumed, and finally, the projected path to Sol. They're coming. Talem gasped in broken English, the Matrix translating the aliens' final effort to communicate. They hunger. But you might see what we cannot. The Matrix zoomed in on the face of a young human woman, her expression transforming from shock to comprehension to determination as the knowledge transferred. Dr. Sophia Chen, the physicist whose work would eventually save the galaxy, stared at the dying alien and said 7 words that would change history. "Thank you. We needed to know the impossible." 3 weeks after Talem's crash, the Matrix showed Dr. Sophia Chen standing before a hastily assembled United Nations Security Council. Behind her, screens displayed equations and stellar models that appeared laughably simple compared to Valerian science, yet contained intuitive leaps that made Alina's scientific training strain to comprehend. "The alien data confirms what my team has theorized for years," Chen explained, her voice steady despite the enormity of her message. "Stars aren't merely fusion reactors. They're complex systems with self-regulating mechanisms we've barely begun to understand." "Dr. Chen," interrupted a representative from Russia, "you were considered a scientific outlier before this alien encounter. Your stellar immune system theory was rejected by every major astrophysics journal. Because I couldn't prove it with our current technology," Chen acknowledged without defensiveness. "But the Valerian data validates my core hypothesis. Stars resist disruption through dimensional harmonic counterbalancing. It's why our sun maintains its remarkable stability, despite theoretical models suggesting it should be far more volatile." The meeting descended into chaos as military advisors rushed in, presenting urgent reports. 7 light-years away, a yellow dwarf star had unexpectedly gone supernova. The Phaetonians were approaching faster than the Valerian data had predicted. "How long do we have?" asked the Secretary General, silencing the room. "At their current consumption rate, 18 months. Maybe less." Chen's calm faltered for the first time. "But there's hope. If my theory is correct, we can amplify our sun's natural resistance to external manipulation, essentially inoculate it against the Phaetonians." "With what technology?" "We have nothing remotely capable of stellar manipulation." Chen stepped aside, revealing a young girl who had been quietly sitting behind her. "This is Zuri Adayemi, age 12. She's been helping me visualize the dimensional interactions." The girl approached a holographic display and manipulated it with an intuitive grace that made the complex equations dance. "Adults think too linearly," Zuri explained, her voice high but confident. "The Phaetonians attack in 3-dimensional space, but they exist in 11 dimensions. We don't need to fight them directly. We just need to make the sun taste bad." The room fell silent, watching as the child demonstrated with a simple soap bubble, blowing it, and then disturbing its surface with a small electrical current. The bubble didn't pop. Instead, it distorted in ways that seemed to violate physical laws, stretching into shapes impossible for a normal soap film. "Dimensional resonance," Chen explained. "Zuri conceptualized it while playing with my lab equipment. The Phaetonians access our stars through specific dimensional frequencies. Change those frequencies, and they can't eat the star," the girl finished simply. After 3 hours of intense questioning, the Security Council emerged with a unanimous resolution. Within days, manufacturing facilities worldwide were being converted, military assets redirected, educational systems reorganized to identify children like Zuri with specific cognitive abilities. Alina watched in awe as the Matrix showed the children's calculation core forming. Thousands of young minds housed in specialized facilities, their unique neuroplasticity allowing them to conceptualize 11-dimensional mathematics that adult scientists struggle to formalize. They worked through intuition and visualization, guided by Chen and a growing team of unconventional thinkers from fields as diverse as quantum mechanics, music theory, and origami. The first prototype, Sun Shepherd, took shape in what had been a nuclear missile production facility, its design a bizarre fusion of conventional technology and principles derived from Talem's data. The test deployment in Mercury's orbit failed catastrophically, creating a dimensional rift that devoured 3 unmanned spacecraft before collapsing. Next time, Chen told her exhausted team as they reviewed the failure, We don't fight the dimensional bleed-through. We use it. A child's voice from the back of the room, a boy no older than 10, asked the question that would lead to breakthrough. What if we're trying too hard to make the sun taste bad? What if we just need to change its song? The Matrix projected the image of a man Alina immediately recognized from historical archives, Admiral Yuri Kagawa, the stoic, intensely private military commander who had been selected to lead what would become the Nova-Armada. His personal logs appeared, time-stamped 6 months before the Phaetonians' estimated arrival. "Construction Protocol Alpha is failing," Kagawa recorded, his voice steady despite the gravity of his words. The hologram showed massive orbital shipyards around Earth, Mars, and Venus simultaneously. Half-completed vessels were being towed into launch positions despite clearly lacking critical systems. We no longer have the luxury of completed ships. Engineering teams will finalize life support en route to deployment positions. The footage shifted to a massive cylindrical device being loaded onto the flagship, the first fully operational Sun Shepherd, its housing marked with radiation warnings and dimensional instability alerts. Dr. Chen supervised the installation personally, her once crisp lab coat now tattered and stained with hydraulic fluid. Beside her stood Zuri, now 13, frantically adjusting equations on a holographic display. The dimensional resonance calibrations require constant adjustment, Chen explained to Kagawa. We've incorporated the children's harmonic modifications, but without live stellar data, we're still hypothesizing. When can we test it? Kagawa asked. We can't. Not fully. A small-scale test would create a dimensional rift. A full test would alert the Phaetonians to our defensive capability. Kagawa nodded, unsurprised. So our first deployment is our only deployment. Yes. It will work or we'll die never knowing why it failed. The Admiral's face, normally impassive, softened momentarily. My crew understands the odds. They volunteered anyway. The Matrix showed the launch of the first Nova-Armada flotilla, 300 vessels of varying sizes and designs, a cobbled-together fleet representing humanity's last hope. The ships moved into precise positions around the sun, many still undergoing construction in transit, maintenance crews in spacesuits working on exposed hull sections. Alina's breath caught as the Matrix displayed Kagawa's medical scans, already showing advanced radiation exposure from the prototype Sun Shepherd. The device's shielding was insufficient, but there was no time to redesign it. His personal physician argued vehemently against his continued command. Admiral, the cumulative exposure will reach fatal levels within 3 months. Then I have 3 months to save our species, Kagawa replied simply, ending the discussion. The Phaetonian arrival came earlier than predicted, their beautiful, deadly aurora-like tendrils appearing at the solar system's edge exactly 72 days after the fleet's deployment. Sensors detected immediate gravitational anomalies as they approached the sun. All vessels, this is Admiral Kagawa. Deploy Sun Shepherds on my mark. His voice remained steady despite the visible tremor in his radiation-weakened hands. Remember your training. Remember Earth. The Phaetonians' approach accelerated, their energy patterns shifting into feeding configuration. Solar monitors detected core destabilization beginning, the first stage of what would become a supernova. Now, Kagawa ordered. 300 Sun Shepherds activated simultaneously, creating a dimensional interference pattern designed by the children's calculation core. The technology was primitive compared to the Galactic Council's, but approached the problem from an entirely different conceptual framework, not attempting to block the Phaetonians, but to change the fundamental vibrational signature of the sun itself. The flagship's bridge erupted in chaos as sensors overloaded. A massive coronal ejection engulfed Kagawa's vessel, communications cutting out instantly. For 23 minutes, the remaining fleet received no transmission from the command ship. Then, through heavy static, "This is Admiral Kagawa." His voice was weak but triumphant. "The dimensional resonance is holding. Solar core is stabilizing. The Phaetonians they've withdrawn. They're leaving." The bridge erupted in cheers, but went silent as Kagawa continued. They're not retreating. They're regrouping, adjusting. They'll try again, and they'll move on to the next system when they fail here. We need more ships. We need the Nova-Armada. The final image showed Kagoa's radiation-ravaged body being transferred to advanced medical facilities, his determination undiminished as he dictated orders from his hospital bed. Begin construction on Phase 2 vessels immediately. We have defended one star. Now we defend them all. Elena stared in amazement as the Matrix transitioned to tactical operation logs, dated 6 months after Earth's successful defense. Admiral Kagawa, now more machine than man, stood before the hastily assembled Interstellar Defense Council, his body sustained by an exoskeleton of medical support systems, radiation burns visible on what remained of his natural skin. Containment strategy has failed, Kagawa stated, his voice synthesized but retaining its authoritative tone. The Phaetonians have adapted their feeding approach and successfully consumed the red dwarf at Wolf 359, despite our defensive perimeter. Holographic displays showed the Phaetonian entities spreading outward from Sol in multiple directions, moving faster than before, as if driven by newfound hunger and urgency. Defensive strategy is insufficient, Kagawa continued. I propose Operation Stellar Famine, a preemptive stabilization campaign targeting every viable feeding ground in their projected path. The council representatives looked stunned. You're suggesting we split our forces. We barely have enough ships to protect Earth. I'm suggesting we stop thinking like prey, Kagawa countered. Every star they can't consume weakens them further. We don't need to defeat them directly. We need to starve them into submission. The Galactic Council has explicitly forbidden unauthorized entry into their sovereign systems, the diplomatic advisor warned. Then they can shoot us down if they wish, Kagawa replied without hesitation. But I suspect they'll change their minds when the Phaetonians arrive, and we're their only hope. 3 days later, the Nova-Armada, now expanded to over 1,000 vessels through round-the-clock construction, divided into autonomous flotillas, each assigned a specific stellar target. The Matrix focused on the 7th flotilla, commanded by Captain Maya Rodriguez, as it pushed well beyond human space toward the Rigel system. Engine configuration failing. Rodriguez's engineering chief reported as their ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel 2 light-years short of their destination. The dimensional stabilizers are creating cascade failures in the propulsion matrix. Rodriguez studied the damage reports with grim determination. Can we reach Rigel on auxiliary power? Yes, but we won't have enough to return to Sol. The captain didn't hesitate. Proceed to Rigel. Begin converting auxiliary vessels into stabilizer platforms. Her executive officer looked shocked. Captain, that's a one-way mission. Rodriguez's response was calm. Always was, Commander. Admiral Kagawa just didn't tell the politicians. The Matrix showed the 7th flotilla limping into the Rigel system, their remaining power dedicated to the Sun Shepherds. As they deployed around the massive blue supergiant star, local defense forces approached, sleek Merithi vessels that had warned humans to stay out of their territory. The comm system activated, showing a Merithi commander. Human vessels, you are in violation of sovereign space. Withdraw immediately or be destroyed. Rodriguez transmitted sensor data showing Phaetonian energy signatures less than 1 light-year from Rigel. We don't have time to argue. Your star is about to become dinner unless we act now. After tense negotiations, the Merithi retreated to observe. The Matrix showed Rodriguez's crew deploying Sun Shepherds around Rigel. The massive star requiring far more stabilizers than their original models had anticipated. Half their ships were cannibalized for parts, crews crowding onto remaining vessels. When the Phaetonians arrived 3 days later, the stabilization network activated, holding for 6 minutes before power fluctuations threatened the entire grid. The resonance pattern is collapsing. The science officer reported as systems failed across the flotilla. Rodriguez made the only decision possible. Divert all power from life support. Evacuate all personnel from secondary vessels and convert them to automated stabilizer platforms. That's 60% of our remaining fleet, her XO argued. We'll never get home with what's left. Rodriguez nodded toward the magnificent blue star they were fighting to protect. We never expected to. But Rigel will still shine long after we're gone. And that's enough. The Matrix showed the Phaetonians retreating from Rigel after failing to feed, visibly diminished in their energy patterns. As they fled, the Marithi ships approached the crippled human flotilla, their commander opening communications once more, this time with visible astonishment. What payment does Earth demand for this service? Rodriguez, conserving oxygen in her damaged flagship, replied simply, your stellar charts. There are more stars to save, and not much time. 20 years after Earth's successful defense, the Matrix displayed strategic operation logs of what had become an interspecies effort. The Nova-Armada, now comprising over 12,000 vessels with crews from 17 different civilizations, had systematically denied the Phaetonians star after star. The once unstoppable energy beings had been herded into the remote Cygnus void, a sparsely populated sector with few viable stars remaining for consumption. Elena watched as Admiral Kagoa's consciousness transfer ceremony was conducted. His physical body, ravaged beyond medical salvation by cumulative radiation exposure, was linked to a distributed network spanning multiple command vessels. The procedure had never been attempted on a human before, based on technology from 3 different alien species hastily adapted. Neural mapping complete, announced the lead Valerian technician, their translucent skin pulsing with cautious optimism. Consciousness stabilizing across network nodes. The main display activated, showing Kagoa's face, reconstructed digitally, but maintaining his distinctive stern expression. Status report, he requested, his voice unchanged despite now emanating from speakers rather than a throat. Integration successful. Admiral, his executive officer replied, visibly relieved. Operation Lighthouse remains on schedule. The Matrix transitioned to a secure chamber within the flagship, where representatives from the once dismissive Galactic Council now sat as equals with human military leadership. The central holographic display showed plans for what appeared to be an artificial star, a construct of impossible complexity that defied Elena's scientific understanding. This proposal violates 17 established laws of stellar physics, argued a Marithi scientist, mandibles clicking in agitation. The containment strategy is working. The Phaetonians will eventually starve. Eventually isn't good enough, countered Dr. Chen, now in her 60s but still passionate. They're adapting, learning to extract energy from stellar sources more efficiently. Containment is a temporary solution. Admiral Kagawa's digital presence expanded across all displays. Operation Lighthouse proceeds as planned. The bait must be irresistible, a star that appears perfect for Phaetonian consumption. The council representatives reluctantly withdrew their objections, having learned through bitter experience to trust human intuition. Construction began immediately, with the Nova-Armada dismantling an uninhabited planetary system for raw materials. The artificial stellar engine took shape, a grotesque hybrid of technologies that should have been incompatible, yet somehow functioned together through principles the children's calculation cores had conceptualized. 3 months later, the trap was set. The artificial star blazed with unnatural brilliance at the edge of the Cygnus void, calibrated to emit precisely the dimensional signatures that would attract starving Phaetonians. All vessels, maintain position behind the brown dwarf, Kagoa ordered, his digitized consciousness simultaneously present on every Armada ship, dimensional shields at maximum. For 3 agonizing days they waited. Elena felt herself holding her breath as the Matrix showed the moment the Phaetonians finally appeared, not the magnificent, terrifying entities of earlier recordings, but diminished, desperate shadows of their former selves. They swarmed toward the artificial star with frantic hunger. They're beginning to feed, reported the sensor chief. Dimensional interface initiating. Activate the inversion sequence, Kagoa commanded. The artificial star's core collapsed inward, not in a devastating supernova, but in a controlled dimensional inversion engineered by 17 species working together. As the Phaetonians fed, the collapse accelerated, creating what one scientist termed a one-way dimensional valve, specifically tuned to Phaetonian energy patterns. The trap worked perfectly, and catastrophically. The dimensional inversion created unexpected shearing effects that rippled outward in fatal waves. 30% of the Nova-Armada disappeared instantly, including 3 command vessels housing fragments of Kagawa's consciousness. "Admiral," cried his executive officer as systems failed across the flagship, "we're losing you." Kagawa's digital image flickered, fragmenting as the ship's systems destabilized. "Operation successful," he managed before his image dissolved entirely. "The lighthouse must be maintained." As the dimensional ripples subsided, sensors confirmed the Phaetonians were gone, trapped in a pocket dimension where they would have eternal sustenance, but no escape. But the cost had been devastating. The Nova-Armada's heart, and its legendary admiral, had been lost in the victory. The Matrix shifted to display formal proceedings dated 1 century after the Phaetonian containment. Elena watched as representatives from over 100 species gathered in a massive chamber constructed in Earth's orbit, the headquarters of the newly formed Stellar Preservation Accord. At the center of the assembly stood Midori Kagawa, daughter of the legendary admiral, now gray-haired but carrying herself with the same unmistakable dignity as her father. Beside her were aging members of the original Children's Calculation Court, including Zuri Adeyemi, now recognized as one of the galaxy's foremost dimensional physicists. "Today we formalize what began as an act of desperation," Midori addressed the assembly. "The Nova-Armada will no longer exist as a military force, but as a guardian fleet, protecting not just against external threats, but against the natural stellar instabilities that threaten developing worlds." Representatives who had once viewed humans as primitive now looked upon them with profound respect. The Marithi delegate, whose ancestors had calculated humanity's extinction as a mathematical certainty, approached the podium. 53 civilizations exist today that would have perished without human intervention. The Marithi acknowledged, mandibles moving in their species' gesture of deepest respect. "We who prided ourselves on our advanced understanding of the universe failed to see solutions that human children conceptualized through play. We have much to learn from your species' unique perspective." The Matrix shifted to display a Valerian historian, whose recording had been added decades later, explaining why these records had been sealed away on the remote research planet where Elena found them. "What follows is classified at the highest levels by order of the Stellar Preservation Accord," the Valerian began solemnly. "The Phaetonian containment, humanity's greatest triumph, came with a cost unforeseen by even the Children's Calculation Course." The recording showed troubling sensor readings from the artificial star that had served as the Phaetonian trap. The dimensional inversion had created a slow-expanding rift, a wound in space-time that threatened to destabilize the entire Cygnus void. The rift's expansion rate was initially negligible, explained the historian, but by the 3rd generation of the Kagawa line, it became clear that intervention would be necessary. The Matrix displayed Hikaru Kagawa, grandson of the original admiral, addressing what remained of the Nova-Armada, now an interspecies force dedicated to stellar preservation. Elena recognized several human faces among the many alien ones, descendants of the original crews. "The dimensional boundary must be maintained," Hikaru explained, pointing to models showing catastrophic galactic destabilization if the rift continued expanding. "Our modified sun shepherds can create a permanent seal, but the gravitational distortions mean deployment must be manual. There will be no return." Not a single crew member requested reassignment. The Matrix showed the final mission of the Nova-Armada, ships piloting directly into the dimensional boundary, deploying modified stabilizers that would permanently seal the rift at the cost of being trapped within it themselves. The last transmission from Hikaru Kagawa's vessel was brief. "Boundary stabilization complete. Dimensional ceiling holding. It has been an honor to serve with you all. The Valerian historian concluded with visible emotion. 3 generations of humans willingly gave everything to save a galaxy that had once abandoned them. The Armada's final sacrifice remains their most closely guarded secret, not from shame, but because true heroes never sought recognition. They asked only that the stars continue to shine. As the recording ended, Alina noticed subtle mathematical patterns in the encryption algorithm, coordinates embedded in the very structure of the data. With trembling fingers, she calculated their position and turned to the night sky visible through her laboratory window. There, where astronomers had long observed an unusually stable nebula, she now recognized the truth. The still operational dimensional boundary maintained by the final Nova-Armada fleet, their vessels forever suspended at the moment of their greatest sacrifice, eternal sentinels ensuring the stars would shine for countless civilizations who would never know their names. "They're still there," she whispered, tears streaming down her face, "still guarding us all."